If funding has been your bottleneck, have you ever stopped to ask yourself whether you might actually be pitching the wrong people entirely? Not the wrong pitch, not the wrong materials, but the wrong people. Because that's the mistake I see over and over from filmmakers with genuinely great projects who are talented, who are ready, and who are still stuck. And I know this mistake intimately because I made it for years. I'm Joyce Mishaan. I'm a filmmaker, executive producer, and I help independent filmmakers raise capital and get their projects funded strategically. And I've spent over 20 years in television production, executive producing shows like 90 Day Fiancé, Chow House for the Food Network. I've produced for networks including TLC, HBO Max, Discovery, Nat Geo, and I spent 10 years on my own feature documentary, Lee Field's Faithful Man, before finally getting it funded, distributed, and streaming on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and all the major platforms. And so that 10-year journey taught me something that I wish somebody had told me from day one. In this video, I'm going to break down for you what that is, right? Why filmmakers consistently are pitching the wrong investors and what actually works instead. So here's what most filmmakers do when they're ready to raise money. They finish a script or they're deep in development, and the first thought is, I need to get this in front of a producer, or I need a film financier. I need somebody with industry credits who will validate this project, and they start chasing film people. They email producers that they found on IMDb Pro, or they pitch executives at networking events. They go to every panel and mixer and industry screening looking for that one person who's going to open the door. And when it doesn't work, and when they get the polite keep me posted email or circle back when you have financing in place, that's when they assume that the problem is them. They think I'm not connected enough, or I don't have the resume yet, or I just need to meet the right people. But that's not actually the issue. The issue is that most of those people are not the people who are going to write the first check. And until you understand that distinction, you will keep running the same loop. And so I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying that film industry people are gatekeepers that you should avoid, right? I spent my entire career inside the industry. These are my people. But I need you to understand how film insiders actually operate when it comes to early stage projects. So producers, executives, traditional film financiers, they're primarily looking for packaged projects with attachments, talent, some level of momentum. They want reduced risk. They want evidence that this thing is going to sell before they're in, and they want proven track record. And so they're rarely first money into a project. They're usually the deal closers, not the deal starters. So when you go to these people too early, before you have any momentum, any funding, any proof of concept, what happens is they say nice things and they tell you the project sounds great, and they'll say, let's stay in touch. And you walk away thinking you almost had it, when really you were in the wrong room at the wrong time. The funding doesn't live here, not at this stage, not yet. Okay, so let me tell you exactly who funded my documentary, Lee Field's Faithful Man. When my co-director Jessamine and I started making that film, I was a producer in television. I was working on major shows, but I had no idea how to raise money for an independent documentary. And we were building the plane honestly while we were flying it. For years, we chased the traditional path. We went to film foundations. We submitted to grant programs. We tried to get the right producers interested. We were doing everything that you're supposed to do, and we stayed stuck until something shifted. We stopped asking who in the film industry can help us and started asking a completely different question. Who has a personal or financial reason to align with this story? And suddenly the right people started to become visible, because people in our network who could use a tax benefit, or peers who wanted a credit on the film, they were willing to pay for it. Donors who cared about cultural preservation. None of them were film insiders in the traditional sense. They cared about three things: what this film meant to them personally, whether the financial structure made sense for their situation, and whether they trusted the team behind it. That's investor motivation, and it has almost nothing to do with your film credits. right? And that shift from chasing insiders to finding aligned investors, this is what finally got the film made. And then it premiered at Charlotte Film Festival, right? We won the Audience Award for Best Documentary. We sold out at Doc NYC. So here's something I want you to actually write down if you're watching this. So there's a critical difference between your funding model and your investor type. And most filmmakers collapse these two things and end up confused. Okay, so your funding model is the strategic mix of mechanisms that you use to finance the film. That's grants, equity, tax incentives, brand partnerships, crowdfunding, pre-sales, gap financing. This is the how. Your investor type is who specifically writes the check. And more importantly, why they do it, right? So the who and the why. And the way you fund a $200,000 impact documentary is totally different from a $2 million horror film, right? It's a different investor profile, different pitch, different room. And most filmmakers out there are copying someone else's path that doesn't fit their project, or they're guessing because nobody ever sat down and explained this. And so when I work with filmmakers, the first thing that we do is we figure out which funding model actually applies to their specific project at their budget level and their stage in their career. Because once you know the right model, you can identify the right investors. And once you know the right investors, you can speak directly to what motivates them. And that's when pitching stops feeling like begging and it actually starts feeling more like matchmaking. Okay, so let me give you a real picture scenario of aligned investors for early stage indie films. High net worth individuals in your extended network, not the industry contacts that you're already chasing. I mean the extended second degree network that you haven't fully mapped out yet. The friend of a friend who sold a business, or the college connection who made a good exit, right? These people are actually closer than you think, and they're often looking for interesting opportunities that also make them feel connected to something meaningful. It can be business owners whose world intersects with your subject matter. And if you're making a film about a particular industry or community or culture, there are business owners in that space who have both a financial and maybe a personal interest in that story getting told. So they can be investors or sponsors, right? There's also professionals who benefit from tax benefits, right? This is one of the most underutilized tools in indie film. Okay, investors specifically looking to put their money into films as a tax strategy, right? Could be accountants, lawyers, real estate, business owners, right? These people have people who are telling them exactly what kind of investments to look for, and they're looking for the right opportunity. Then there's impact investors and private donors, and especially for social justice films, documentary or otherwise, there's usually an angle here, right? And there's a whole category of funders whose job it is literally to give money to projects that align with their mission. Foundations, donor advised funds, impact investors. This world is one that filmmakers don't know enough about. There's also brand partners, right, who align with your audience. And if your film has a built-in audience or a specific community or fan base, right, there are brands that want to access that audience and will pay for that, okay, as sponsors, right, or as equity partners. And let me just say, I know that the moment we're in, studio budgets are tighter and traditional development models are shrinking, right? We have the strikes and the mergers and AI, right? But here's what I want you to hold on to. Capital still exists. It's just not sitting inside the same old structures anymore. And the filmmakers who are getting funded right now are not the ones with the biggest contact lists. They're the ones who understand how to build a strategic case for their project and speak directly to what their investors actually care about. Okay? And it's actually good news, right, for independent filmmakers if you know how to use this. So you're watching this and you're actively trying to get a film funded. Here's where I would start. Step 1, stop making a list of film people and start mapping your aligned network. So get a piece of paper, open a spreadsheet, and ask yourself, who in my extended network has recently had a liquidity event, or who's connected to my subject matter? Who could use a tax benefit? Who cares deeply about the story that I'm trying to tell? You'll find people, I promise you, they're closer than you think. Step 2, get clear on what makes your project investable. Beyond it's a great story, right? Investors fund alignment, clarity, strategy, and risk mitigation, not passion alone. You need to be able to articulate what is the audience for this film? What is the financial model? What is the exit? What's my track record, right? And if you can't answer these questions confidently, then that's really the gap. It's not your network. Okay. And step 3 is to learn to speak investor language without losing your filmmaker voice. Okay. So you have to become someone who understands what your specific investors are motivated by. And then you have to tell the story of your project in a way that speaks to that motivation. And you already know how to tell stories. So you just need to apply that skill to your funding pitch. Okay. And if funding has been your bottleneck, I want to offer you a reframe here. You're probably not stuck because of lack of talent. You're probably not stuck because of lack of connections. Okay. You may just be pitching the wrong room. And the fix for that is not working harder at the wrong strategy. The fix is getting strategic about who you're talking to and why they should care. And if you want a structured starting point for this, I have a free resource. It's called the Film Funding Blueprint. It walks through the first steps of building a real financing strategy for your specific project, including how to identify which funding models fit your film, how to start mapping out the right investors. Okay, so that download link is below in the description. And I genuinely want to hear from you in the comments. So what project are you working on? Who are you currently pitching, right? Where are you in this process? I read all the comments, so please let me know. And if this landed for you, please subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of thing I talk about week after week. Now, if you've done all of the steps that I just mentioned and you're thinking, okay, Joyce, but how do I actually get in the room with these people? Good question. I walk you through that in this next video here.